Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on NASA Tournament Lab Textile Test Methods Challenge. My name is Jonathan Yakashaw from NineSigma, and I will be your host and moderator for this webinar. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be transcribed for viewing on the NASA Hub on Nine sites at a later date. At this time, I'll go through the agenda for this webinar. First, we'll provide the speaker introductions and then provide an overview of the challenge. After that, we'll present the frequently asked questions of the Textile Test Methods Challenge and then work through a live question and answer session. To participate in the live question and answer, please submit your questions at any time through the Q&A chat box. We will collect and present these questions during the live Q&A section. If we do not answer your question live, please note that we will be transcribing and answering all questions asked during this session and posting them on the Textile Test Methods Challenge forum for viewing at a later date. Finally, we will wrap up with information on what you can do today for the Textile Test Method Challenge, including where to register, how to stay connected, and how to submit your proposal. Now, I am pleased to welcome the following speakers to our webinar this morning. From NASA, we have Steve Rader, Deputy Manager of the Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation, NASA Johnson Space Center. We have Lindsay Aitchison, Spacesuit Engineer, NASA Johnson Space Center. And lastly, we have Dana Valish, Spacesuit and Crew Survival Systems, NASA Johnson Space Center. And from NineSigma, we have Kevin Stark, PhD, Vice President, NineSigma. The topic of today's webinar is the NASA Textile Test Methods Challenge. NineSigma, representing the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, invites proposals for test methods or procedures to assess wear or damage to candidate spacesuit textile materials. Now let's hear from Steve Rader for NASA's vision for this challenge. Steve?
Thank you, Paul. So I just wanted to give everyone a larger context of which we're running this challenge. NASA is very committed to using crowdsourcing and challenges as some new tools in how to get work done, and we're very excited about accessing really a lot of the knowledge and skills out there in the public domain and the folks that are working these kinds of challenges. I work in the Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation. That's a center at NASA that works really across all of NASA and really the whole federal government to help infuse crowdsourcing as a method of getting work done and solving real problems. Next chart. We actually have what we call the NASA Tournament Lab, and hopefully you've heard of that, and obviously you have because it's part of the title for this challenge. The NASA Tournament Lab is actually a collection of several different platforms where we run challenges, and we're really excited about using NineSigma. This is one of two challenges that we are running on NineSigma, and it's our first experience with them, and they've been a great partner so far. And these challenges run all around the world, and we have lots of opportunities. So if you get a chance to check out our site, nasa.gov/COSI, you can also look up nasa.gov/solve. And we will list all the challenges that we do throughout the year on those sites. And there's actually some very exciting challenges coming our way almost every month. So hopefully you'll continue to engage with us and help us solve the really hard problems associated with space exploration. Okay, back to you, Paul.
Great, thanks, Steve. And now we'll hear from Dana Valish on the technical aspects of this challenge.
Thanks, Paul. As you said, my name is Dana Valish, and I'm a spacesuit engineer here at NASA Johnson Space Center. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what NASA has done in the past to address abrasion of EPG materials for planetary environments. And first I wanted to emphasize that it'd be very beneficial to check out the documents that we have attached to the challenge website. They're very informative on what we've done in the past, so I'll briefly cover that right now. over the past 25 years, our main method of testing abrasion in this way has been using the tumble test method. Basically, this consists of a large rotary drum tumbler. We make some lunar simulant rocks, and then we also just have loose lunar simulant in the drum itself. You can see in the middle picture of this slide. And then we make up a fabric layup of the EPG that is placed around an inflatable bladder, or in the past we've also just used foam as kind of a backing as the core of this fabric layup that you can also see in that picture. And then on the right side, those pictures are just before and after of kind of the tumble test that we've done. So we can go to the next slide. So more recently, we've changed the configuration of the tumble testing, and this information isn't in any of the links that we've provided because it's fairly new. We've just done this in the past year. What we like about this configuration is that it takes about only 10% of the fabric that compared to the previous method, and also we can run multiple samples at the same time. Some of the results that we've gotten back so far has shown that it does give you more reliable abrasion that we're looking for, but the method that we used to adhere the materials to the sidewalls using the tape wasn't sufficient, and so if we would go forward with this kind of method in the future, we would definitely have to improve upon that. The next slide. Some of the limitations of tumble testing in general that we've had with our method is that it lacks reliability to indicate the size and quantity of the particle migration. And then it also doesn't have a clearly defined method to catalog and quantify the degradation of the layers. The method itself is also very time and labor intensive, and basically this is due to all the phases of the method. The pre-test method, there's a lot of buildup that needs to be done of the fabric samples, and then also making the lunar simulant rocks. During the tumble test itself, you're limited on how many samples that you can run at the same time, and we generally run it for an 8-hour period for each run. And then the post-test is very labor and time intensive with the amount of cleanup and then the analysis that it takes for that. I also wanted to point out that as part of this, the method should consist of a multi-layer stack up. The current EPG designs are multi-layered, and so we'd like to be able to have a method that can incorporate that.
All right, great. Thank you. Now we'll turn to Kevin Stark, and he will talk about the timeline and evaluation criteria of this challenge.
Thanks, Jonathan. So what I really want to address, and a lot of this is on the website as well, is what criteria NASA will use to evaluate proposals that are submitted for this challenge in order to select winners. And I'm not going to go through this line by line in detail, but just sort of create some highlights. So as Dana indicated, a lot of the limitations of current testing has to do with repeatability, reliability. And so the last 2 points that you see here, we do have some specs that when you're putting your response together, try to keep these in mind to think about what correlation you think you can provide, what repeatability you have, and the difference between two repeated tests. But really, going back to the top, this is really about providing a textile abrasion method against different simulant rocks. And again, there's references on the website to documents to explain what a lunar and a Mars simulant are composed of. There's really a couple different things, as Dana indicated. The first is really, fiber degradation to wear test, as well as when there's abrasion that happens, showing how your method can detect and keep track of migration of the dust or materials through the different layers. So again, really take a look at how your method that you're proposing can achieve these objectives. And we really want you to pay attention to this criteria because, again, these are the elements that we worked on with NASA that define how they will evaluate various proposals in order to select a winner. Next. So just to recap the challenge timeline, if you're here today, obviously you know today is the webinar on October 29th. This challenge launched earlier this month, and we will close the challenge to submissions on December 3rd. And please pay attention to the time. It's 5 p.m. Eastern. One of the reasons we have that is if you look at the website, we have emails and phone numbers to get to our help desk. If you have questions about this, if you have questions about what are the right kinds of things to be writing up, general questions about how to register, if you forgot your password, those types of things. But especially on that last week, we're really staffing that help desk to make sure you get all the help that you need. And as we'll indicate at the end, we really want to encourage you to not wait until 4:59 p.m. on that day to start to figure out how to register. Please get in there, register early. Once you register, you can click on the Respond Now button and see what the response form looks like so that you can start to compose your response so that it's a simple matter of copy and paste to submit everything in the end. And then finally, obviously we're going to run into holidays near the end of the year, but the anticipated announcement date for winners will be late January. And of course, if there are any shifts in the timeline whatsoever, please come back to the forum or the web page. We'll keep people updated if anything changes.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. So why should solution providers be interested in this challenge?
And again, this information is listed on the website, but just to emphasize, this is a prize-based challenge. There are $15,000 set aside to award winners, and the intent is to select 3 top winners who will each receive a cash prize of $5,000. And in addition to that, there's recognition of prize winners that NASA will undertake. So we'll have published announcements of who those winners are. And also we'd like as much as possible to create individual profile stories to showcase the new innovations that can come out of a challenge like this.
It's now time for the challenge frequently asked questions. These questions are often asked about projects in general or have already been submitted at the forum or to the provider help desk.
And again, before we jump in, we have some sort of standard questions we've already been hearing through the help desk and through the forum. So we'll address some kind of frequently asked questions, but please don't forget to jump in onto the Q&A box on the webinar toolbar and submit questions live, and we'll take a look at those and answer them in a bit.
Okay. First off, Kevin, what about intellectual property, IP? How am I protected?
So again, the very common points, and of course we recommend that you click on the terms and conditions that are available on the website that detail this in a lot more detail, greater depth. But the first point that's really important to emphasize is that respondents must submit non-confidential information. And another feature of this challenge, and different challenges have different requirements, but if you accept a prize money from NASA, then NASA receives an unlimited royalty-free license to use those winning methods. Again, check the terms and conditions for more information on the details.
Okay. What is the best way to respond?
So again, I mentioned that just a couple minutes ago, we have a copy of the Respond Now button. If you go to the web page, you'll see it right there. You do have to be registered in order to complete that proposal template, but that's the official way to respond. Now, we have created a forum, and we've seen some great interaction and questions there, and it's really fun to see the community interact with each other and comment on this challenge. But please be advised that posts to the forum are not eligible responses. In order to submit a response, you do need to go to the website, register, hit Respond Now, complete the form, and hit Submit. I will also mention that once we hit the deadline, we'll shut that down for new responses. But if you start a response, you can save it for later. You can come back and edit your response up until the deadline. But I guess my best recommendation is to take a look at the questions there, work your response offline in a Word document or whatever works for you. And then when you're ready to submit, log on, copy and paste those elements in, and you're all set.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. Now, what if I have only a partial solution?
So this is a question we get quite frequently, and of course, the best possibilities are when you can present an entire, fully baked test method from soup to nuts. But if you have only a piece of that, or if you only have one element, NASA would absolutely be interested in taking a look at that, because part of open innovation and running prize-based challenges is to get introduced to new innovations and approaches, even if they only address a part of the challenge. So if you have just an element that can really track the migration of particles really well, but the abrasion piece or other elements you're not as strong on, please submit what you can, and NASA will be interested to take a look at that.
Kevin, could you please explain the role of NineSigma and NASA in this challenge?
Sure, thanks, Jonathan. So again, we want to make clear that NineSigma was contracted by the NASA Tournament Lab to run this challenge and solicit responses, as Steve had indicated before. But we do want to make clear that every eligible entry that we receive will be transferred to NASA, and NASA is solely responsible for determining winners.
Okay. Will there be any follow-on work beyond the contest?
So to this point, Open Innovation at NASA is really intended to help them identify and connect with new innovators. And there's always a possibility for additional follow-on work, but of course, anything beyond the contest is subject to regular government procurement procedures.
Okay. And one last frequently asked question. What if I've just got a cool idea about how to help NASA? What should I do then?
Sure, and so we're already very excited by how people have posted some comments on the forum, and I think if you want to get excited about this challenge and NASA in general, please interact with the community and go to the forum and post comments. But we do want to make it clear, you've heard from Dana, and we've referenced Lindsay as well, that we do have a space suit team that will be evaluating the responses. So other ideas of how to help NASA get to Mars, those are obviously interesting and cool, but those won't really be evaluated outside the context of this challenge. So, the best way to think about maximizing your chance for winning is to be attentive to what the problem statement is. Go back and listen to this later, what Dana had talked about earlier. Read the information on the website. Pay attention to the evaluation criteria as we had talked about. Download the challenge summary. And those elements will really guide you in the best way possible to be as responsive as you can and possibly win this challenge.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. At this time, we'll open up the session to any questions from the audience. Please continue to submit your questions through your Q&A chat box. We'll take the rest of the time to answer them live. If, however, we don't get to your question, don't worry. Our Q&A session is being archived, and all questions and answers will be made available on the challenge site following this webinar.
Great. So we already have one question that is talking about, so I'll read this. Can we present multiple possible solutions for measuring the same parameter or one concrete possible suggestion? So I will make it clear that people can submit multiple solutions if you like. I guess the best advice we could give is, and it's really up to you to think about how to present your capabilities. I think when we see this most of all is if you have very different approaches, the best way is to highlight those as separate responses. But if what you have is sort of a single solution, think about that as one response and build on that in as much depth as possible. So I know it may sound like I'm waffling a little bit. We really want to leave it to you to think about what's the best way to present your capabilities. But if multiple responses that you would be submitting are nearly identical, it's probably best to collapse that into the best single response you have.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
And again, for Steve, Dana, and Lindsay on the line, feel free to jump in if you want to build on these. But I think the next one I'll call on. So the next question, so I'll read this: will only the outer ortho fabric be tested, or the whole suit material, including bladder and restraint? So maybe I'll turn that one over to Dana if you want to address that. Just sort of again we're talking about a multi-layer system. Do you tend to test the entire sort of stack, or do you often test individual layers separately?
Yeah, that's a good question. The response is that we generally don't test with the bladder and the restraint, but as I mentioned earlier, there are multiple layers to that outer protection garment. So we do use that whole stack up of the environmental protection garment itself, but no, the restraint and the bladder are generally not included in that.
Okay. Great, thanks.
At this time, we are still accepting more questions. If you have any questions for the NASA team, now would be an excellent time to pose them while we have them on the line. Likewise, if you have any questions about how to go about responding to the NASA challenge, we have a great resource here with Kevin Stark. Now would also be an excellent time to ask those questions as well.
And maybe one of the things, I'll make a quick comment just so people are aware. So you'll see on the NineSigma website that Paul Musili is the program manager from our side managing this challenge. He's been traveling today and wasn't able to be the technical speaker, so that's why I'm standing in. But yeah, you'll see his face and name up on the site. So if you have questions that go into the help desk, you may also be hearing from him. He's also been active on the forum answering your questions as well, just to identify another name. There's another question we had in terms of, sort of the reference point for these materials, sort of the lunar and Mars, simulant. Dana or Lindsay, do you want to sort of jump in and kind of address, where do you get those? I mean, you obviously can't just order up a sample of Mars rock, of course.
Hi, this is Lindsay. So the simulants, the constituent particles that you use, they obviously vary in size and sharpness and things like that. What we tend to start with for the lunar simulant is the one called JSC1A. And you can actually just Google that term. And there are certain companies that provide that sample to the general public. You can order it online if you want to. But what we do with that, it's a really fine particulate sample. So it has the fine dust is what that one is. But for ourselves to make rocks out of that, we actually combined wood glue with some of that simulant and let it sit in an oven for an hour. And we can provide that recipe if people are interested in seeing what that is, about how we made moon rocks.
And I'll add in there too that the challenge website does have, I believe, a link to some of the references about the lunar simulant and the Martian simulant.
Yes.
All right, we've got a couple more questions here.
Okay, so the next one is the challenge open to non-U.S. companies. So that's a good point that is important to highlight. If you take a look at the terms and conditions, we do indicate that this is open to entities outside the U.S. And obviously the kind of rules of the challenge are governed by U.S. federal rules. And there are obviously some State Department restricted areas of the world, but take a look at the terms and conditions. But this is open to non-U.S. entities, and non-U.S. entities are certainly eligible for prizes.
Great, thank you, Kevin.
So the next one, and we addressed this a little bit, but I think it might be interesting to talk about this a little more. If a submission gets selected by NASA, will the submitter have an opportunity to work with NASA on refining and developing that solution? And again, that goes back to once the contest is over and there's an award, what could happen next? And maybe Steve, do you want to jump in and indicate, you know, what maybe talk about case studies on how you have engaged with solution providers that have been able to bring interesting innovations forward?
Sure, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so we've had other instances where we've actually had competitors win challenges, and then what we do is we communicate with those winners about their solutions, and in some cases, depending on the nature of what the problem is or what the solution is, we'll either just consult with them if that works, or if there's a long-term agreement, if that's if they have a startup company or something, then there are ways that we can work Space Act agreements or procurements such that we are able to further collaborate with those folks and work up solutions in the future. It just really depends. We just have to be very mindful that in the government we can't endorse certain companies. We can't. We have to have a very fair process so that we don't exclude else that might also have that solution. So the procurement process is very restrictive for good reasons, so that we stay on the up and up with everyone, and there's no kind of backdoor way to work with NASA that violates any of the procurement laws. So we always like to work with folks and help get ideas launched and developed. We just have a framework that we have to work within.
Great, thank you, Steve. And we have a few more questions to move on to.
So this next one is sort of back to Lindsay. Does the wood glue introduce ingredients that could interact with samples in an unexpected way?
You know, it probably does. We're not sure. Again, when we started doing that, it was more because we wanted different particle sizes. And so by using the wood glue combined with the simulant, we were able to get some of those sharp, jagged edges to represent some of the volcanic type rock formations that we were looking for. Great.
Yeah, the next one, I'm enjoying this because we're getting some really great, you know, crunchy technical questions. So the next one, will the perchlorates in Martian soil create unique problems?
They will. That's actually one of the things that we're trying to look at in the future. We have spacesuit samples that are going to be part of the Mars 2020 project. But unfortunately, we don't have that data yet, so we're not entirely sure what effect the perchlorates will have on spacesuit fabrics.
Great.
All right, I just want to remind you all that we are still taking live questions. If you have any questions for the NASA team, now would be an excellent time to avail yourself of their expertise while they're on the line.
Yeah, we seem to be blowing through these very quickly, so we appreciate the engagement by the community, and I think we'll hold for maybe another minute or so just to make sure, and then we'll wrap up with some final comments if there are no further questions.
Sure. If you do have any questions, please use the chat box and send them in that way. We will then pose the questions to the NASA team, or if it's something that Kevin Stark can answer directly, he will do so.
Layers on this.
Okay, so I'm not sure, Dana or Lindsay, you want to address this, but how are the multiple layers of the spacesuit bonded together?
So generally, when we build up a TMG for a spacesuit, it's just stitched together. There are edges, so there's nothing in between the different layers that actually holds them together. And part of actually for space, it's beneficial that those layers do have a little bit of spacing and aren't actually, adhered to each other. So the only place that they're attached is just at the seams.
Okay. The next one is more of sort of a background question. Has the team investigated or conducted any experiments on self-healing polymers or self-healing polymer fabrics for use in spacesuits?
Yes, we have looked at that at kind of a low level through some of our partners through the Small Business Innovative Research Program. We have had a few of those come through looking at it kind of at the elbows and knees, but more specifically on gloves and bearing materials.
Great, thank you, Lindsay.
Okay, the next one. So do you ever have to worry about sweat from the astronauts migrating from that wearer and interacting with the fabric or influencing the interaction with any material that may be migrating through the spacesuit?
Currently, what we use for our spacesuits is an impermeable bladder, and so the sweat cannot migrate through that. We are looking at potentially being able to use a permeable material in the future, but we're still studying the effects that might have just on the spacesuit and the environment that it would be in. So, but at this time, it is an impermeable bladder for the EVA suits.
Great, thank you.
Okay. We've got another question coming in.
Have you investigated any new methods to instantly heal holes in the suit? So again, it's similar to the kind of the self-healing polymers, but I guess this is more, just beyond the material itself.
Yeah, besides what Lindsay kind of mentioned, that's kind of the extent that we've looked at of self-healing materials. It's kind of that coating. So no, we haven't had anything that you have a hole and then it can heal itself from there.
Okay. So with respect to UV radiation, to what extent, or help us understand how you consider damage to fabrics from UV radiation or possible interaction with altering, how that affects mechanical stress or just the mechanical stress of wearing the suit itself.
Yeah, that's absolutely a problem that we address, particularly when we're looking at long-term space flight. We're trying to separate it out in this challenge specifically. For this challenge, we're focusing on the physical distress of the fabrics caused by interaction with the physical environment. Radiation testing is something that we've historically done as a separate task. If we find it's a good way to do this textile testing with, simulants or something to that effect, we can combine the physical testing and then take those physically degraded samples and do the radiation testing, or we could do the radiation testing, then do the physical testing, or some combination thereof. But they definitely they both have impacts onto the strength of those materials and how long they last. But to date, we've been addressing those separately.
And I think related to that, the next question, do you vary the temperature range in the abrasion testing you're doing today, and what expectations do you have on expanding that possibly in the future?
Yeah, right now there is no temperature variance that we conduct with that tumble testing. That could certainly play a point, kind of going back to the radiation as well. So those are all factors into it. But like Lindsay mentioned, we've been trying to kind of keep it, simple, if you could call it that, with just limiting it to the physical environment.
Okay. So the next question I can take, because it's more sort of process related. The question is, can I submit pictures, videos, or other media to supplement my response? And is it helpful? And I'll kind of go back to the old adage that a picture's worth 1,000 words and a video's worth 1,000 pictures. So if you find that that's a way to supplement your response and sort of highlight what you're already doing or what you've already tried, that's great. Now, practically, if you look at the response template once you register, log in, and take a look at that, we do have some guided questions that we map into a form so that we can deliver kind of standard responses for everybody that submits. We do allow people to upload documents, and we want to limit that to about 10 megabytes. Again, if you need help kind of understanding how to do that, we can help you out. But usually the easiest way is to, if you have a PowerPoint or Word document, convert that to a PDF because that'll cut the file size down. And again, what we're trying to do is make it easy to compile responses, easy to transfer those to NASA so that they can evaluate them. So that's the best way that we can suggest submitting pictures. Videos, on the other hand, are a little more problematic. So the last thing we want is for you to be spending your entire day waiting for your video to upload to a site just so that NineSigma can receive it, and then we've got to transfer giant videos over to NASA. And so the best mechanism that we've found for that is please don't submit your videos directly through the website. But if you have your video hosted elsewhere, either it's on YouTube and sort of publicly available, give us a link to that, include that in your response. Or if you have it on a password-protected site, give us the link and the password, and that could be another way that we can provide that supplemental information to the NASA team so that they can take a look at that as part of your response. But again, the other thing that we'll ask you to keep in mind is keep the reviewer, put yourself in the shoe of the reviewer. If submitting a 2-hour video is difficult, they're not going to have time to look at that. Make sure your pictures are cleanly labeled and it's easy to understand. And I'm sorry, Steve, I think you wanted to jump in and build on that.
No, this is great. Yeah, just one thing to add on to that. In other challenges, people have tried to provide extra information or files via Dropbox links or Google Drive links. Just be aware we will not be able to evaluate or look at any of those links for security reasons. We don't want to be somehow importing a virus into the NASA environment. So we have a fairly strict policy that we can't go do that. We filter all of the data for the submissions through the NineSigma site and are assuming that they are handling the virus security at that level. So.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And we have a few more questions.
Next one, what is the end point in the current test method? If number of cycles to fail, is it number of cycles to failure, or can you explain what the output of the test method is that you're expecting?
The current tumble test method that we use, we generally run for 8-hour periods, and that's just because we monitor it while it's running. We need to have somebody kind of present in the building, and so we do that during business hours. And it also kind of shows the worst case EVA. Generally, our EVAs are 7 to 8 hours, and so that goes to the extent of the tumble test that we do. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
I think you addressed it.
Okay.
The next one are the use of in the test method larger rocks an important criteria, or if there's a method that only address sort of smaller particles and dust, will that be sufficient? Is that okay to submit?
Yeah, we're definitely open to multiple ideas. So yeah, that was building the rocks was the method that we used for the tumbler we thought was appropriate. And so if there's a different method that doesn't have rocks but can perform the same type of abrasion, that we saw kind of on the lunar missions, then we'd be open to any of those ideas.
And just to build on that a little bit, part of the reason we added the rocks to the tumbler is because we were concerned that without those, the dust itself is very fine, so you wouldn't be getting the actual abrasive properties by just rolling in it. Another thing we kind of looked at was using a specialized taper head, and so with that one, you didn't need to have a rock sort of interface just because you could have the grit of the dust by itself constantly impacting the fabric. So, I mean, it just depends on the methodology that you're going for. We're really trying to look at the abrasion and then the migration of those fine particles through the layers of the EPG.
Great, thank you.
Okay, question is really related to how anti-gravity is important to consider or not. Or I guess lack of gravity is the right phrase.
Right. For this particular case, yeah, it's not that important. It doesn't really affect the results.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Just want to reiterate, now would be an excellent opportunity to pose questions to the NASA team. You can submit your questions via the chat box. Or, again, if you have process-related questions about how to respond, Kevin Stark would be an excellent resource to pose your questions to.
Okay. That's great. We had a nice run in the last batch of questions, and I think it's really fun, especially since we have the advantage of Dana and Lindsay on the line to get their perspectives and hear more about why this is challenging and what they're doing to address it. So with that.
Thank you, Kevin. So, what can you do today? You can visit the contest site. See the URL on the screen right there. It's ninesites.ninesignma.com/web/NASA-EVA-test. While there, you can register for NineSites. You can receive updates, view the frequently asked questions, and, as I said, join the community. You can also visit the challenge forum to stay connected with the project as it advances. If you have any questions about this project or about how to respond, you can use that email link there, phd@ninesigma.com. Your email will go to the provider help desk. Likewise, you can also access the provider help desk and the people staffing it by dialing 216-283-3901. Please remember that the deadline for submissions is December 3rd, 2015 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time.
And I just want to jump in also, if you've been hitting our website and taking a look at that, as Steve had mentioned earlier, we at NineSigma, we are currently running two challenges for NASA. The webinar for the other one is coming up on November 10th, so if you're interested in that other challenge, please click over there and register for that.
Great, thanks Kevin. Thanks for that reminder. And at this point, that will conclude our webinar for the morning. For additional information, again, we encourage you to visit the challenge site. You can register to stay connected and participate in the challenge forum. And please note that the deadline for submissions is December 3rd, 2015 at 5 p.m. Eastern U.S. time. One last reminder that this webinar was recorded and will be made available on the NASA Hub on NineSites, along with the transcript of the question and answer session. Thank you very much for attending. Once again, to our speakers for their time and their expertise. We appreciate your time and look forward to receiving your submissions. Thank you very much all, and have a very great day.